Breath of the Wild is by far the most popular Zelda game in terms of sales, and it's pretty widely thought of as one of the best video games ever made. But Breath of the Wild also threw the Zelda formula that most of us had become accustomed to completely out the window. Hello there, everybody. I'm Nintera, and today I want to share my thoughts on a very important question. Is Breath of the Wild a good Zelda game? Let's talk about it. I also wanted to let you guys know that this weekend I'm going to be streaming Skyward Sword HD. It's coming out on Friday. I won't be able to stream that day, but on Saturday at 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, I'll be on Twitch streaming Skyward Sword HD. So I'll have the link to my Twitch channel down below. Come check it out and hang out with me. All right, now let's get into the video. So I want to start off with the good things about Breath of the Wild because, spoiler alert, this is a really good game and I've enjoyed tons of hours playing it. So first of all, this game is absolutely beautiful. And those beautiful graphics get to be displayed so well with the huge open world. Between the paraglider, horses, and fast traveling, there are plenty of different ways that this iteration of Hyrule can be explored. And the creators of the game did an amazing job at making us want to explore it. We are rewarded for quite literally overturning every rock, climbing every tree, and investigating every corner of the map. There are super cool locations to explore that aren't necessarily secrets, but that give the world so much life and history. We have the Zonai ruins being overrun with both moss and Lizalfos, the absolutely gargantuan remains of a long-dead leviathan encased beneath the ice, and a small secret pond where the Lord of the Mountain roams. Breath of the Wild went above and beyond with not only giving us a huge world to explore, but also making us want to explore it by hiding a new secret behind every corner. I think that the overworld is far and away the absolute best part of Breath of the Wild, and it honestly might be my favorite world in any video game I've ever played. Between enemy encampments that you can find scattered around, side quests around every corner, and of course the 900 Korok seeds that you can find, there's just so much in this world. There are definitely games that have these huge sprawling open worlds, but nothing to really go find in them. They're just kind of naked. I also love that in exploring Hyrule, we can find little Easter eggs almost of past games in the series. Like, for example, the springs that Zelda visited to try to awaken her powers. We see the exact same springs in Skyward Sword. We can find the ruins of Lon Lon Ranch in Hyrule Field. And let me know if you guys notice this too. I think the fountain that's in Castletown is the same as the fountain that's in Twilight Princess's Castletown. So I guess what I'm saying is Breath of the Wild's open world is just a masterpiece, and I absolutely loved exploring it. Next, I want to talk about Breath of the Wild's characters. The fun characters are one of the best parts of the Legend of Zelda series, and this game is no exception. I got really attached to the other champions through the cutscenes that we see in the game, and I appreciate how different all of their personalities are. We also have other memorable characters outside of our main cast of champions, like King, Rome, Boss Faramus, Hyrule, Cass, Sidon, Hestu, Paya, and a load of other brand new characters that we see for the first time in this game. And I could go on and on listing them, but I won't, don't worry. I also, of course, always love the inclusion of characters we've seen before, like Impa and Beetle. We also see more Zelda races in this game than I think we've ever seen in one game before. We have Hylians, Gorons, Gerudo, both Zora and Rito somehow, Koroks, Sheikah and Yiga, and even dragons and fairies. There's a ton of lore and history that we learn from interacting with these characters, and they make the world of Hyrule come alive. Alright, the last element of Breath of the Wild that I want to talk about that I absolutely love is the story and the cutscenes. So I really loved the totally voice-acted cutscenes in this game. It was a little strange not being able to give Link whatever name we wanted, but I guess just being forced to have your hero be named Link is better than the alternative.
Was that the power? Huh? No.
Nintera.
Get up! You're just fine.
For the most part, I thought that all of the voice actors did a wonderful job and they sounded exactly like how I thought they should. I'm just hoping we have the same quality of voice acting in the second one with casting Ganondorf.
That Triforce that will make me ruler of all Hyrule!
And I also really love the story in this game that gets revealed through flashbacks to 100 years ago. Once again, I love the characters in this game. The main champions are just fantastic. I love hanging out with them and seeing their personalities and their backstories. I also really like that we saw Link and Zelda grow to be friends, even though they didn't necessarily start out being that close. I loved seeing their journey, and honestly, sometimes I'll just go back and watch all of the flashbacks in order so I can get the whole story and see them become friends over and over again. I do have a little bit of a gripe with the storytelling in this game, but hang out, we'll get there at the end of the video. So now I want to talk about the parts of the game that I'm not necessarily crazy about, but I hope they might be tweaked a little bit for Breath of the Wild 2 to make it feel more Zelda-y, for lack of a better word. But I also want to clarify how I feel about the difference between Breath of the Wild being a good video game and Breath of the Wild being a good Zelda game. So the stuff that I talked about before is just stuff that I think makes a good video game in general. But there are certain things that I think we as fans have come to expect from a great Zelda game that kind of differ from our expectations for any other franchise. I can say without a doubt in my mind that Breath of the Wild is an amazing video game, maybe even one of the best. But now we're going to talk about things that keep it from being my favorite Zelda game. First is the music. For most of our past Zelda games, especially Wind Waker, since I've played that one about 700 times, I can hear a song from the game and tell you exactly where it's from and what would be happening when we heard it. Like if you played me this, I'd be able to tell you that we're on Dragon Roost Island. But I can't really say the same thing about Breath of the Wild. The music is more atmospheric, and it seems like the visuals and physical environment were supposed to be more of a focus than the music. It makes sense why Breath of the Wild went that way, but I would love to return to the more traditional style of music in the sequel. It would also be really cool for Link to be able to play an instrument in this game. We don't really see any evidence that he knew how to play one in Breath of the Wild, but hey, he's a legendary hero. Maybe he'll learn quickly. Next is the lack of traditional Zelda dungeons and bosses. In Breath of the Wild, we had shrines, divine beasts, and Hyrule Castle in lieu of traditional Zelda dungeons that we have seen in every other Zelda game. And I really enjoyed the shrines. For a while. Honestly, it didn't take long for the excitement of finding a new shrine to fade. I got to the point where I would find a new shrine, activate it so that I could fast travel to it later, then leave without even going inside. I would usually come back to them eventually, but I had to be in the right mood for it. And then the divine beasts, which were more dungeon-sized, felt like more of the same. They had the same theme and very similar puzzles to the one found in the shrines. Then the bosses of the divine beasts, the Blight Ganons, all felt and looked really similar to each other. And they could all be fought in pretty much the same way, just in a slightly different setting. I think it would have been really cool if the divine beasts as dungeons were more themed to fit the region that it came from. I know they each had a little bit of that mixed in, but I would have loved for it to be even more pronounced. When you were finally ready to go confront Calamity Ganon, Hyrule Castle looked a lot different than the shrines and divine beasts, but nothing else was really new. We fought the same enemies that we have fought dozens of times while exploring Hyrule, and Calamity Ganon himself felt really similar to the Blight Ganons. He of course looked really similar, and was just another case of hit it until he dies. I loved the classic Zelda bosses where there was some kind of puzzle or special technique that you had to figure out to beat them. It wasn't enough to just hit it more than it hit you. But I also tend to be a lot better and prefer puzzle solving to straight up combat, so it's probably just my personal preference. Like when I play games like Fallout, I try to make super charismatic characters so that I can avoid combat at any costs. It's not just Zelda that I'm a total chicken in. And finally, I want to talk about the lack of story progression throughout the actual game. Let me explain what I mean. The main quest of the game is to unlock Link's memories of what happened 100 years ago, maybe reclaim some of the divine beasts along the way, and then kill Calamity Ganon. But really, all of that is optional for you to complete the game except for, actually killing Ganon. You don't have to find all the memories, and you don't have to pacify any of the divine beasts. In past games, big milestones would change the tone of the game, or Link's goal, or change something drastic about the overworld. For example, in Wind Waker, Link's original goal is to save his sister, but then when she's rescued, he learns he needs to restore the Master Sword. Then he needs to assemble the Triforce of Courage. Then he needs to stop Ganondorf. In A Link to the Past, Link encounters Aghanim and then ends up in the Dark World, and we get to explore a whole new place. That doesn't really happen in Breath of the Wild, though. Link has one main goal that doesn't really change for the entirety of the game, and nothing we do really changes the world in any significant way until we're actually defeating Ganon. There's a story that we uncover, but it all happened 100 years ago. It's not something that we're living through right now. This is much more of an exploration-driven game rather than a story-driven game, and that doesn't make it bad or anything. I just love story-driven games. I hope this is making sense. Sometimes it just feels like the story happened already, and we're just experiencing it through flashbacks. That doesn't make the journey that we take during the game less fun or anything, because there's still so many side quests and side stories that we can complete. It just feels like the main story happened, and then we're kind of in this lull period until we reach our final goal of killing Ganon. Of course, everything that I've said here is my opinion. I hope that's clear. I'm not trying to say your ideas are wrong. Absolutely not true. We can all like and dislike different parts of our favorite games. And we only criticize because we love. Trust me, I would not have thought this much about a video game if I didn't love it as much as I love Breath of the Wild. So, in conclusion, is Breath of the Wild a good game? Yes, absolutely. I believe that Breath of the Wild is a good game. It's not my favorite Zelda game, though. I don't think it's in my top 5. It's probably in my top 10. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and think about it, but it's a great video game. All right, so there are my thoughts about Breath of the Wild. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments whether you agree with me or disagree with me, or partially agree, partially disagree. That's probably where most of you fall. So leave me a comment down below and we can talk about it. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for weekly Legend of Zelda videos. And once again, I'm going to be streaming Skyward Sword HD this weekend, so check my description for the link to my Twitch channel. I think I'll be streaming at about 2:00 p.m. Pacific time, but you can also, I started a Twitter because I can't do community messages on YouTube until I have 1,000 subscribers, so you can go follow me on Twitter. The link for that should also be in my description down below, and I'll do my announcements on there. And speaking of Twitch, I also play on a D&D live stream every Friday night at 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, so I'll have the link to that channel in my description also. If you've made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye!